What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 3 new most broken builds in part of Exile's 2 new update, The Dawn of the Hunt. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on, then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it, and then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. This setup revolves around players who like to keep things safe, but still do massive amounts of damage. You will be fast, flashy, and full of explosions, and here's how it works. We'll fire off glacial bolts that leave behind ice crystals, which then we blow up for massive amounts of damage. And if you want to automate this process for the endgame, then just use Cast on Freeze to trigger freezing mark instantly. That way your explosions will chain off like fireworks with zero downtime. In general, you can start this build as early as level 30 and use it all the way to the endgame, including the pinnacle bosses. And the best part about it is that no rare uniques are required, so this makes it perfect for solo self-found or pretty much any player who wishes to play a powerful build without a stash full of meta equipment. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we are going with the Huntress and our ascendancy is Amazon. Then for the first skill we have Glacial Bolt with support gems like the Ice Bite, Scatter Shot, Cold Infusion, Primal Armament and Bullseye. Then second we got the Artillery Ballista with the Fire Infusion, Martial Tempo, Culling Strike, Rising Tempest and Blind Side. Next we got the Herald of Ice with the Reach, Magnified Effect, Cold Mastery and Execute. Next we have Hypothermia with the Heightened Curse, Cursed Ground and Ritualistic Curse. Then for the next one we have Thunderous Sleep with no support gems. Next we got the Cast on Freeze with the Freezing Mark, Impetus, Energy Retention and Overabundance. Then next we have Eye of Winter with the Cold Exposure, Unleash, Inevitable Critical and Deceleration. Then also we got the Ghost Dance with the Fast Forward and Precision. And finally we're using the Wind Dancer with the Pin, Wind Wave and Blind. Most of the setup is structured around spamming the glacial bolts to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration, speed and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this attack damage node and then go like this while taking these two, so Primal Instincts and Eagle Eye. Then next keep going forwards until we get these 3, so Primal Sundering, Precision Salvo and Escape Velocity. Then from here we keep on going forwards until the end point and then go to the bottom right here and get these 2, so Acceleration and Falcon Dive. Then next up we circle back to this point and then go up top and get all of these nodes right here. And finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game to make our build functional, and then later on the priority won't really matter that much. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Critical Strike, which drastically increases your critical hit chance if you scale the accuracy like I've done for our gear. And to use this fully we need to stand near the enemy to not waste any of our accuracy. Then second we got Penetrate. This allows you to gain massive added physical damage from your weapon. This is a boost in damage but also makes it easier to find a high DPS weapon. Then next we get the Stalking Panther, which drastically increases your evasion rating, so make sure to use an energy shield body armor to gain more defenses while avoiding this node's downside. And finally we got Predatory Instincts that adds even more boss damage. This helps massively on extremely hard encounters like the pinnacle bosses, but also saves you time on map bosses and rare targets. Next we have gear. The weapon of our choice is the Tense Crossbow with increased bolt speed, increased physical damage, more to accuracy, more to critical damage bonus, and increased attack speed. Then for helmet we have the Chapped Hood with evasion rating, and for more we want evasion rating, max life, fire and cold resistance. Then for chest we have the Sacramental Robe with energy shield, and for more we want faster start to energy shield recharge, increased max energy shield, then even more energy shield and more to spirit. Then for belt we have the Heavy Belt with increased stun, max life, max mana and more to charm slots. Then for gloves we got the Barbed Braces with evasion rating, and for more we want even more evasion, more accuracy, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for boots we're using the Dragon Scale boots with evasion, and for more we want increased movement speed, more evasion, then increased evasion and fire resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Prismatic Ring with more to all elemental resistances, more accuracy and max life, while for the second one we have the same exact exact ring, so just copy the first one. And then finally for amulet we have the solar amulet with more to spirit, max life, max energy shield, and then even more to spirit. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best case scenario setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So as you can tell, our whole build pretty much revolves around spamming the glacial bolts and seeing the enemies explode. So at the start we wanna first of all fire a single crossbow projectile that explodes on impact, leaving behind a cluster of ice crystals. Destroying those ice crystals will trigger a cold AoE explosion that deals attack damage, scaling it with your weapon and any other attack based stat. To maximize the effect, make sure that you're landing a glacial bolt directly on the enemies. But keep in mind though that these ice crystals can block your movement if you're not careful. With some practice, you will learn how to fire and move without trapping yourself in a frosty maze. But then as soon as you can, boost your glacial bolt to 20% quality. This upgrade lets you reload 3 bolts at once instead of just 1, which is going to be huge for your damage uptime. Normally, you'd need manually to blow up the cast on freeze ice crystals by using a second skill, but this build takes a smarter route. By pairing the cast on freeze with the freezing mark, the explosion is fully automated. So by firing the glacial bolt will freeze your target and explode. The freezing mark detonates instantly, setting off your ice crystal in a satisfying chain reaction. And then finally, we will throw a Herald of the Ice into the mix, and those explosions will start chaining like crazy, which then in return creates these screen-wide crazy chain reactions and massive DPS explosions. This setup revolves around scaling Boneshatter's self-damage into a power to then further convert it into huge damage numbers. The core gameplay loop involves around initiating combat with a leap slam to prime enemies for stun, which is then followed by detonating them with the Boneshatter for massive AoE damage. It's a high risk, high reward type of playstyle, where the more you slam, the stronger you get, but you've gotta be tough enough to take the initial damage. For gear, we are going to be focusing on high armor and two-handed maces. That will boost our big slam bonuses even more. So we'll be extremely tanky with amazing upgrades and scaling into the endgame. And with amazing clear speed, and bosses will melt in seconds under our insane AoE pressure. So if you like aggressive melee playstyle and don't mind taking few hits to dish out triple or even quadruple the normal build's damage, then the Smith of Kitava warrior build is definitely for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we are going with warrior and our ascendancy is Smith of Kitava. Then for the first skill we have Mage Strike with the support gems like the Ruthless, Overpower and Close Combat. Then second we got the Boneshatter with the Impact Shockwave, Magnified Effect and Reach. Next we got Infernal Cry with Premeditation and Raging Cry. Next we have Perfect Strike with the Window of Opportunity, Fire Infusion and Execute. Then for the next one we have Herald of Ash with Cannibalism. Next we got Leap Slam with the Martial Tempo, Brink, Holy Descent and Candace. Next we have Scavenge Plating with Persistence. Then also we got Hammer of the Gods with Concentrated Effect, Heavy Swing, Brutality and Fist of War. Next up we have Seismic Cry with the Raging Cry and Enraged Cry. And finally we're using Berserk with no support gems. Most of this setup is structured around spamming Boneshatter to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration, size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this melee damage node, and then go like this while taking these two, so Brutal and Smash. Then next keep going until we get these two, so Blood Rush on the right and Unstoppable Barrier on the left. Then from here keep on going until we get to the Singular Purpose. Then afterwards go until this point and then go up top right here until we get the Resolute technique. Next up circle back a little and then keep going until the end and then go to the bottom. And keep going until we get these two, so Bruised Shanked and the Giant's Blood. And then finally from here I recommend to go up top right here and get all of these. And then get the rest of them, but to be honest, after the second keystone, the rest nodes are more of a personal preference. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then later on, the priority won't really matter that much. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Cold Stalker. This will give us a huge resistance boost in order to easily reach 75% elemental resistances during the campaign and make our fight super easy. Then second, we want the Forge in Flames. That boosts our elemental resistances now to 90%. As this new update is much harder, so focusing more on survivability at the start will really pay off later in the game. And then next we want the Smith's Masterwork and go with the leather bindings, molten symbol, glowing metal and the kitavan engraving. All of these will give us 5% regen, which makes the boss fights much easier. Then also body armor gives us 25% physical damage from hits, then we get 5% more max fire resistance from armor, and our body armor even further gives us 15% increased max life. And by the way, this website was bugged for some reason, so that's why you can see that I've selected these Ascendancy nodes on the website. Next we have gear. The weapon of our choice is the Disintegrating Maul, which causes enemies to explode on critical kills, then adds physical damage, increased physical damage, more accuracy, increased attack speed and reduced attribute requirements. Then also we got an offhand called the Goldwork Tower Shield with armor, and for more we want increased block chance, max life, physical damage reduction, and fire and lightning resistance. Then for helmet we have the Great Helm with armor, and for more we got even more armor, accuracy rating, max life, increased critical hit chance, more to strength and chaos resistance. Then for chest we have the Ornate Plate with armor, and for more we get that our max life get generated from 1.5 to 2.5% max life per second, plus additional life regen every 4 seconds that gives us 15% max life. Then also we get even more max life and fire resistance. Then for belt we have the White Belt with increased flask charges, max life, max mana, more strength and fire resistance. Then for gloves we get the Empire Grasp with armor, and for more we get increased armor, more strength, gain life every kill and increased global physical damage. However, this unique is not required for this build to work, so if you can afford it or get it, then try to look for something similar. Then for boots we're using the Carved Greaves with armor, and for more we get increased movement speed, max life, max mana, more to strength and stun threshold. Then for first ring we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance, adds cold damage to attacks, max mana, more to strength and even more fire resistance. Well then for the second one we have the same Ruby Ring, but this time with fire resistance, max life, adds physical damage, more to all attributes and lightning resistance. And then finally for amulet we have the Jade Amulet with dexterity, max life, max mana, more to spirit, more dexterity and fire and cold resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best case scenario setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. This build's core gameplay centers around managing stun threshold and detonating enemies in rapid high impact bursts. The general approach to clearing is to leap into packs using the Leap Slam, which builds heavy stun on enemies. Once enough stun is built, so 40% for normal, 60 for magic, 70 for rares, and 80 for uniques, then enemies become primed, which is visually indicated by a glowing orb above them. You then want to trigger the Boneshatter, which detonates prime enemies and causes large AoE damage and potentially chaining skills across entire groups. Any enemies that survive this initial wave, such as the stragglers, can be finished off by using the Mace Strike, or follow that up by the Leap Slam. Then however, against tougher rare monsters that resist splash damage, then Hammer of the Gods is your go-to for direct hits and cleanup. Then for bosses and single target scenarios, this build will shift towards calculated burst windows, so you will need to rotate between the Perfect Strike and the Hammer of the Gods, and then boosting their impact even further with Infernal Cry and Seismic Cry for maximum uptime and AoE reach. Bosses with mobility or high resistance are first of all softened up by Mace Strike to build stun, and then hammered with the Boneshatter for the kill. When possible, you even can tank hits on purpose to fuel the additional Perfect Strikes and increase our overall damage output. As you can tell, this playstyle revolves around precision timing, positioning and quick decision making, so things like animation cancelling via the dodge roll will let you leap and slam, while keeping your mobility very high. The setup revolves around summoning Raging Spirits by casting the Flame Wall and Ember Facilade, and we are going to be focusing and building around a playstyle that commands a deadly army. We'll use a mix of skeletal snipers, raging spirits and the inert minions that explode on death. Offensive buffs like the Pain Offering and curses such as the Flammability will boost damage, while the Energy Shield and passive nodes will offer us a strong defense. This build requires no unique items, which makes it ideal for solo self-found. And with smooth leveling, capped resistances, and endgame potential, it's perfect for players who love Minion Mayhem with amazing survivability and DPS output. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we are going with the Witch and our ascendancy is Lich. Then for the first skill we have Skeletal Warrior with the Maim, Sacrificial Lamb, Infernal Legion and Fire Exposure. Then second we got the Skeletal Arsonist with a Scattershot, Muster, Martial Tempo, Feeding Frenzy and the Minion Mastery. Next we got Skeletal Cleric with Ingenuity, Essence Harvest and the Death March. Next we have Skeletal Sniper with the Binding, Commandment, Corrosion, Primal Armament and Heft. Then for the next one we have Skeletal Storm Mage with the Conduction, Stormfire, Lightning Penetration, Overcharge and Lightning Mastery. Then next we got the Flame Wall with the Arcane Surge, Mobility, Arcane Tempo and Energy Barrier. Then next we have Flammability with Inspiration, Heightened Curse, Curse Ground, Ritualistic Curse and the Magnified Effect. Then also we got the Ember Facilate with Unleash, Blind and Fast Forward. Next up we have Raging Spirits with the Elemental Focus, Fire Infusion, Last Gasp, Immobilate and Culling Strike. And finally we're using Pain Offering with the Meat Shield, Dance Maccabi, Ablation, Persistence and Fawn of Rage. Most of the setup is structured around using our minions to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration, size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage node, and then go like this while taking these two, so the Raw Destruction and the Power of the Dead. Then next go to the right and get all of these three, so Dampening Shield, Pure Energy and Melding. Then from this point we keep on going until the end and get this whole side right here. Next up circle back a little and then take left and keep going until the end. And the order in which we unlock them doesn't really matter, so at this point it's up to you. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then later on, the priority won't really matter that much. And then now, let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock Necromantic Condient, and to effectively utilize this node we need to invest into the mana regeneration and max mana, and this will ensure that the mana drain does not hinder our overall performance. If done properly, this setup can significantly increase our damage and give this one-shot AoE potential. Next we want the Soulless form. This offers substantial benefits. It requires careful balancing of life and energy shield values. Investing in energy shield will be crucial, as it serves as a buffer that prevents life loss. However, if your energy shield is depleted, then the bypass damage will affect your life, which makes it essential to manage both resources effectively. Then next we want Eternal Life. When we combine this with the Soulless form, it provides a robust defensive layer, by ensuring that your life remains unchanged as long as you have energy shield remaining. You'll be able to take damage without compromising your life. And finally we got Crystalline Phylactery, which allows us to directly suck it in a Javel in our Ascendancy tree. So to get the highest efficiency, we want to equip gear and select passive skills that will boost our energy shield to avoid mana cost penalty. And also we will pair it with other Ascendancy nodes like the Eternal Life, which prevents life loss, while you have Energy Shield or the Eldritch Empowerment, which increases non-channeled spell damage and allows the Energy Shield to be used as a resource without interrupting its recharge. Next we have gear. The weapon of our choice is the Rattling Scepter with increased spirit. Allies deal more damage, more levels of all minion skills, and allies deal increased attack speed. Then also we got an offhand called the Quartered Crest Shield with armor and energy shield. And for more we want increased block chance, max life, more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. Then also we got the second weapon set, and remember that no uniques are required for this setup to work. But for our second weapon we got the Trench Debris with the adds to physical damage, increased attack speed, more levels to minion skills, and increased to minion attack speed will also affect our character. While for the offhand we got the Rattling Scepter with more to spirit, more levels of all minion skills, and allies deal more damage to increased attack speed. Then for helmet we have the Kamasan Tiara with the energy shield, increased energy shield, max life, and more levels of all minion skills. Then for chest we have the Sacramental Robe with faster start to energy shield, max energy shield, increased energy shield, more to spirit, more to intelligence and chaos resistance. Then for belt we have Divine Belt with max life, max mana, more to charm slots and chaos resistance. Then for gloves we got the Val gloves with energy shield, and for bonus stats we want max and increased energy shield, max life and more to fire and chaos resistance. Then for boots we're using the Sans worn sandals with energy shield, and for more we want increased movement speed, max and increased energy shield, and more to fire and chaos resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Venter's Gamble with max life, more to spirit and fire, cold and lightning resistance. While for the second one we have the Topaz ring with the lightning resistance, max life, fire and lightning resistance. And then finally for amulet we have the Jade amulet with dexterity, max and increased energy shield, more to spirit and more to levels of all minion skills. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best case scenario setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So we want to begin our fights by casting the Flame Wall, which serves as a dual purpose. It will ignite nearby enemies and summon 2 raging spirits. These fiery minions will immediately launch into action, targeting anything caught in the blaze. Next you want to use the Skeletal Sniper's command ability to launch a deadly gas arrow. This projectile is particularly lethal against enemies already burning, and upon impact with the ignited target it will detonate a volatile explosion, which deals heavy area damage and spreading further chaos. Then next we follow that up by casting Flame Wall once again, which will summon 2 additional raging spirits. These fresh minions will bolster our offense and keep the pressure on the enemies, especially when fighting larger packs or elite targets. Then next we cast Ember Fusillade, which will bring forth 2 more raging spirits. This will add to our ever-growing minion horde and ensure a steady wave of attacks from multiple angles. Then to supercharge minions for tougher encounters we want to cast Pen Offering. This powerful skill will grant a significant damage boost to all of our minions, which makes it especially effective during boss fights, or when facing rare enemies with higher health pool. And finally, to weaken high priority targets, we want to cast Despair. This curse will reduce the chaos resistance of cursed enemies, ensuring that your minions deal even more damage